Greetings. My name is Lance Bell. I was not going to talk about Donald Trump's cabinet picks this week, but in the light of what happened, I am compelled to do so now. In this week's show, I will look at a few and try to break them down as best as I possibly can. Now, when I look at the selections in question, the first one that sticks out is Dr. Ben Carson to lead the Housing and Urban Development. Now, I will admit, I thought that if it was a joke at first, in which I will get to later in this show in another selection. It's an odd one. Now, Carson did say on Tuesday that he spent a lot of time there and dealt with a lot of patients from that area and recognized that we cannot have a stronger nation if we have a weak inner cities. Now, that statement makes sense, but I personally think that this is not the right spot for him. Attorney General made way more sense. I have seen on the interwebs people jump on this selection due to his actual experience in his field, and I agree with that. I think that Trump is looking at the fact he grew up in poor Detroit and worked in the inner city as a doctor, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I wonder if you place him with Sonia Sotomayor, a Supreme Court justice that actually grew up in a housing project in the Bronx, would this be much of an outrage because she has the same amount of experience? A betting person would say no on that. The next selection that I will look at is two different ones in Wilbur Ross for Commerce Secretary and Stephen Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary. Now, Trump publicly stated that he wanted to drain the swamp, but this does not look like it. I understand that he wanted some experience, and I get that. But this screams Wall Street, and I am not the only person that thinks that way. In this video from Reuters, the two selections are discussed.
President-elect Donald Trump made his picks for the Treasury and Commerce departments. Former Goldman Sachs banker and Trump's campaign finance director Steve Mnuchin has been tapped for Treasury, and billionaire investor Wilbur Ross will lead the Commerce department. Carrie Leahy of Decision Economics says Wall Street is breathing a sigh of relief. Steve Mnuchin's priorities are tax reform and trade pact overhauls. He also wants to remove Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac from government ownership and is aiming for a sustained pace of 3 to 4% economic growth. Both Mnuchin and Ross have criticized the financial reform legislation known as Dodd-Frank, passed after the 2008 financial crisis, so there could be changes there. Asked on CNBC about Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen's performance, both men said they believed she had done a good job, with Ross adding he believes the Fed will raise interest rates in December.
This video I just played says it all. As long as Wall Street is happy, they will have no issues. Now, it remains to be seen if they even get the job. That is up to Congress. However, I'm not completely sure, if confirmed, it would help the problem in that area. The next one I look at is the one I can talk about directly, and that is Linda McMahon to head the Small Business Association. Linda flippin' McMahon. Now, this is one where one of the rare times that I take my politics hat off, and put my professional wrestling fan hat on. Now, I will say that she did help her husband Vince out at the beginning, not even questioning that. However, the prefaces that have been used for the pick is way, way wrong. And this is where my history lessons comes in for you. You have to go back in time when Vince bought out the then WWF from his father. At that time, they were a territory of the National Wrestling Alliance, and make no mistake about it, they controlled the entire northeastern U.S. from Philadelphia to Maine. Small business they were not due to the fact of the area they were covering and running shows at Madison Square Garden. Now, when Vince in the early 1980s decided to go national, this is where the small business portion stopped. Keep in mind that the only coverage nationally at that point was on TBS with then Georgia Championship Wrestling. Now, McMahon decided to buy out the time slot there. That family tried to power play and corner the market in that area, with the disaster results known as Black Saturday. Don't believe me? Look it up. And I do not mean by watching the WWE produced Rise and Fall of WCW. That part of it was garbage, and long-term fans know that. Now, from that point on, the only thing stopping that was Jim Crockett Promotions out of Charlotte. The McMahon family, in my honest opinion, takes 70% of the blame of the territory system collapsing in the late 1980s, with Crockett taking the rest of the blame. What I just stated outside of how to divide blame is no doubt about it historical fact. Look it up because I'm not lying about it. From that time period on, they were big business and do not let them tell you any different. Now, to put my politics hat back on and talk about the last item of today's show, and that is Elaine Chao. Now, this one makes sense for two reasons. The first one is that she has actual cabinet experience. I forgot about this, but she was the only one that survived the entire run of George W. Bush. Let that sink in for a moment. Please do. That says something right there. Furthermore, I know that she had to have meetings with the transportation secretary. That part is not talked about at all in this. With all that being said, there is one wild card that almost no one is talking about, and that is her spouse. Her spouse is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. If she is selected, she would be the automatic go-between for the White House and Congress, and that is what is lost in that pick, and I am surprised no one is talking about that more. Now, I will admit there are quite a few out-of-the-box selections, with one pending a waiver from the Senate, but this will be an interesting upcoming spring, and I totally hope that it will not turn into an international mess.